Hi everyone, my name is RJ Hawkes and I'm an Adobe evangelist, and today I want to talk a little bit about best practices for how to integrate Adobe Captivate content in an Adobe Presenter project. So to put some context around the demo that I'm going to be showing you, what you're looking at here, this is Microsoft PowerPoint 2007. As you can see, there's the ribbon up here. In fact, if you have Adobe Presenter installed, it'll actually add its own little ribbon area. I only have 3 slides, so I want to keep this fairly simple. On slide 1, just have 3 bulleted items here. And in fact, if I go to the Adobe Presenter ribbon section, and I go to Edit the recording, the audio, you're going to find that I have, in fact, already synchronized the audio. So when I get to a certain portion, when I get to a certain point with the audio, I want the next animation to fly in. And that's obviously something that you do pretty easily in Adobe Presenter. What I want to do is I want to focus on slides 2 and 3. And so these are just blank slides. This is where the Captivate content is going to go on slide 2. And then on slide 3, that's where the other content is going to go. So I'll tell you what, a good best practice, first of all, is to title your slides where the Captivate content is going to be inserted. And so I'm going to show you 2 types of Captivate content. I'm going to show you a typical software demonstration. And then on slide 3, I'm going to show you a branched scenario. In other words, the difference is going to be that a software simulation is typically very linear in the way that it plays back. It goes from the beginning, goes to the end, and you typically want to use it to supplement a software-based type of e-learning course that you're creating in Adobe Presenter. So that's why I'm going to title it Software Demonstration. And then slide 3 is going to be slightly different. This is a branch scenario that we're going to create in Captivate. And so the difference is that while the software demonstration is kind of linear, the branch scenario is a lot more non-linear, which means that it's going to be sort of self-paced. Your learners are going to be able to take their time, go at their own pace, and be able to complete the entire branch scenario. And so what Adobe Presenter is going to do is it's going to compensate for that by fully pausing the recording or the playback until the learner completes the scenario, and then he or she can press next to go to the next slide. Okay, so with that said, let me go back to Captivate. And the first thing I want to talk about is what's the right recording size whenever you're targeting an Adobe Presenter presentation. And so I have found that there are 2 sizes that work really, really well. And they are either 1024 by 768 and also the 800 by 600. They both work really, really nicely inside of Presenter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and capture an application, and I'm going to go with the control panel here, and I'm going to go with a custom size of about 800 by 600 since I had to lower the resolution for this recording. And I'm going to click OK for that, and that's exactly what's going to get captured here. So what I'll do next is I'm going to capture in automatic recording mode, and I'm going to go with the simple demonstration, and I can even check my settings here. So I do want the text captions, the mouse, highlight boxes, and all of that is pretty basic. So I'm going to click OK for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and record and click around a couple of times just to have something to capture. So I'm going to hit record. And let's say that I'm showing some new hires how to control the appearance and the personalization of Windows 7. So I'm going to click on that. And I just took another screen capture there. And let's say that I want to change the theme. So I'll click on that. And then let's say that I want to go with characters. And let's say that I want to come back to Windows 7 and maybe come back to this architecture, which is what I currently have. Okay, so those are pretty simple steps. And to end the recording, I'm just going to press the end key on my keyboard, and that'll bring it back. And I'm just going to go ahead and call this Software Sim for Presenter. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK for that. And that's going to open. So really, really simple, nothing to it. In fact, if I hit preview and preview in the browser, notice that we have 800 by 600 here. And as you can see, it's pretty much a self-running software demonstration, but they do a really good job supplementing the e-learning course that you might be creating in Adobe Presenter. So let me go ahead and close that, and I'll come back to my presentation here. And a couple more things you want to do in preparation for bringing this into Presenter is you want to go to Edit, you want to select Preferences, and then in the Preferences you want to go to Publish Settings, and you want to make sure that your ActionScript version is set to AS2, in other words, ActionScript 2. The reason why you want to do that is because Adobe Presenter only supports AS2 and not AS3. Very likely that in the next release you will see support for AS3, but today is AS2 only. Now, while you're here, the other thing you want to make sure that you check, and of course these things are by default for the most part, but it doesn't hurt to double check. So the other thing you want to do is make sure your frames per second are set to 30. And the reason why is because you want to match that to the default frames per second set in Adobe Presenter, which is also 30, as well as in Adobe Connect Pro. So obviously having that same setting is the way to go. So once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and click OK for that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit Publish, because pretty much the demo is ready to go. And I'm going to send it to my Adobe Captivate folder here, Adobe Captivate Projects. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK for that. And we will create a folder so that we can find the files pretty easily. Now, you don't actually need the HTML, but if you want to generate it, just leave that checked. But you really don't need it, because the only thing that we're going to need is a final SWF, the Swift, the Flash file. So we're going to go ahead and click Publish. We're going to say yes, go ahead and create that folder. And we're going to go ahead and click Close. All right, so now that we have that Swift, we can come back to PowerPoint. We can come back to Adobe Presenter. And notice how I'm currently on slide 2. And I'm going to go back to my Adobe Presenter ribbon. And notice how there's a Flash and SWF icon. That's the icon that you want to click to bring in Adobe Captivate content. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to go ahead and navigate. And so I'm going to navigate to my documents, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to my Adobe Captivate projects. Remember, we created a folder, and we called it Software Sim for Presenter Demo. I'm going to go ahead and select the Swift that was generated. I'm going to click OK for that, or Open, and then the file is going to be inserted. So, don't worry if it looks something like this. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and preview this slide. And the easiest way to preview this slide is to press Shift F5. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to let it play there for a little bit and then hit the escape key. And what that does is that takes you out of a preview mode. But what I found is that it leaves a nice looking poster image as opposed to that ugly playback that we saw. So that's a little tip right there. Okay, so that's looking really good. And in fact, let's go ahead and publish this so that we can preview it and see what our project is looking like. So to do that, I'm going to go to the Publish icon in the Adobe Presenter ribbon. And I'm going to go ahead and just send it to the default location. And I'll just call it Bullets PPT 2003. Why not? And I'm just going to click publish for that. And we're going to be able to view it right after it gets published. So if you're new to Adobe Presenter, what this is doing, it's just creating a folder and it's generating the HTML file as well as all the Flash files and everything else that's needed to properly play back this this project. Okay. So this is what that looks like, and again, there is some audio. I'm just going to turn it off here. I don't think you guys can hear it anyway, but I'm just going to turn it off, and I'll just hit play. And I want you to notice the audio synchronization that I illustrated at the beginning. So those little animations are going to start coming in when I get to a certain point in the audio. But one of the great things, and I'll just pause, but one of the great things about Adobe Presenter is the ease with which it creates this navigation user interface. Really simple to navigate. There's the outline. Your end users will be able to jump directly to a slide. The playback bar is located at the bottom, and I can even attach files. There's a lot of good stuff in here. But what we're really interested in, and I'll just let it play there for another 15 seconds, and watch what happens when the playback gets to slide number 2. That's the Captivate simulation. So let me go ahead and just hit play. And there's the final animation. And as soon as it hits the end, it's going to go to slide 2. And our demonstration begins to play there. Okay, now there's clearly a problem there. I wanted to gradually show you what's going on here. Now you can see the Captivate simulation, so that looks great. However, wouldn't it be great if we could actually control the playback of the Captivate file using the main playback bar in Adobe Presenter? That's what we're going to do. So the problem with this is that the end user, first of all, would have to be really quick at pausing the slide so that a presenter wouldn't just kind of go through its 5 seconds and then move on to the next thing. That's going to be sort of a problem for them because they may not even understand what's going on. And then second, when you think about it, we really don't need this playback bar that Captivate automatically generates. The reason why is because it confuses the learner. So they have this playback up here at the top, and then they have another one in Adobe Presenter. So the whole thing does not look as cohesive as it could. So I wanted to show you what it looks like. And then the other thing that I want you to notice is I did say that 800 by 600 is one of the preferred sizes here. But watch how it's not filling up the entire slide. There's some gaps right here on the right. There's some gaps on the left. So we're going to go and fix that. So let me go ahead and close that. Let me come back. And let me go ahead and show you how you would go about fixing that. So I'm going to go back to Captivate because what you really want to do is you want to go to Edit and you want to select Preferences. And then you want to go to, I get a little confused where this option is. There we go. So it is under Publish Settings. And what you want to do is you want to externalize resources. And the resource that you want to externalize is the skin. Now, why is that? Well, since I did not externalize the skin, you saw that Captivate generated a single SWF file, but that single SWF file also included that playback bar at the bottom. And we saw that that's not a good idea because it doubles the playback bars available in the final Adobe Presenter project. So what we want to do is we want to externalize it so that we get 2 separate SWFs. One is the main SWF, and then the other SWF is the skin. And of course, we can throw that out because we're not really going to need it. So when I click OK and I hit republish here, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit publish and say yes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to come back to Adobe Presenter, and I'm going to delete this simulation here, and I'm going to reinsert it. And so I'm going to go and watch the difference. So unlike before, where we only had 1 SWF, we now have 2. And by the name, you can tell that this is the skin. So we want to bring in the main Swift. We want to click open for that. It's going to come right in. And again, we can do that little tip that I shared, which is Shift F5 to preview the slide, and then immediately hit Escape so that we can create a better poster there. Now, right away you can tell that this new size without the skin has perfectly filled out the entire slide. So that already is looking a lot better. In fact, to check it out, I'm going to go ahead and hit Publish again. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at our progress here. Okay, so here's a slide, and I'm going to go ahead and just fast forward to slide number 2. And sure enough, it already looks better. You could see that the slide is filled entirely with this. You could see the playback bar. However, we still have that problem that the Captivate file seems to be playing back, but the progress bar down at the bottom in Adobe Presenter is not actually syncing up to that. So obviously that's a problem because this should actually be moving along and it's not. Well, let me show you how to fix that. So I'm going to come back to Adobe Presenter, and right from within this little pull down, there's going to be an option that you want to go and display, and it's called Manage Swift File. That's exactly what we want. So I'm going to select that, and all we need to do is we need to put a little check mark next to the Captivate Swift that says Control using the presentation play bar. That's exactly what we need. So when I click OK for that, and when I republish my project, and I'm going to hit Publish, watch what happens now. Okay, so here comes the audio. Just going to mute this. And we'll just fast forward till about there, and we'll let it play and watch what happens. So it's going to get to slide number 2. And now you see that software simulation playing back, but you also see the presenter playback bar progressing accordingly. That's exactly what we want. In fact, if I hit pause right now, I will not only be pausing the playback bar of the whole Adobe presentation, but I will also be pausing the Captivate, which is exactly what we need. In fact, if I scrub it left, you could see that I am, in fact, scrubbing the playback bar of Captivate. So, so this to me is huge. I do a lot of Adobe Presenter presentations where I supplement them with Captivate simulations. And again, either 1024 by 768 or 800 by 600 works really well. And I just have to remember that I need to give it that extra click in the settings. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you while we're at it here is watch the title that was added to the Outline tab. So you see how it says Outline, and you see how it says Software Demonstration. Well, the way that I was able to automatically get that is, you may recall that even before I brought in the Captivate simulation, I purposely added a title in PowerPoint. Let me just come back. And so I had selected a layout that would enable me to add a title. And the great thing about this is you don't have to worry about adding this title again to Adobe Presenter. It's there. And so if Adobe Presenter finds a title on that slide, that's exactly what it'll use. So why not repurpose it? So let me come back and put it back to about right there. Okay, excellent. All right, so just to recap, what we talked about thus far is to embed a sort of a self-running linear Captivate simulation. All right, so let me go back to Captivate, and let me go ahead and close this, and I will close this file. So I'm going to come back and open up another file that I have here. And notice that I purposely resized this. In fact, this is a soft skills training that comes with Captivate. You can actually go to the Captivate installation folder, and it's called Soft Skills Sample, and look for it inside the samples project. So it wasn't the right size, but I did resize it so that it would be exactly 800 by 600. I guess I was off by a couple pixels there. And the way to do that is you go to Project and you say Rescale. And I'm going to go and try to rescale it again. So I'm going to uncheck the Maintain Aspect Ratio here. It's going to go up to 600. And I'm going to say keep the project the size that it is and center it and just use this background here. And I'm going to go ahead and click Finish, and I'll say yes for that because I really want this to be exactly 800 by 600. Okay, now the first project that I showed you was a software simulation, place from beginning, place to the end. This one is a little different because when we get to slide 4, for example, we go ahead and zoom out a bit. Just going to remove some of these bars here. Notice how the learner is going to be presented with several options, and based on where they click, they're going to be provided some feedback. So this is clearly not a self-running software simulation, but rather this is a branch scenario simulation or soft skill training or whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is that it's not a linear way of consuming this content. Okay, so to illustrate this, I'm going to go ahead and publish it just like I did, and I'll just call it Soft Skills Sample 800. And again, I'm going to publish it to a folder, and I'm going to go ahead and hit publish, and I'll say yes. And there's also some audio that is going to be captured as well. And remember, I didn't even check the externalize skin, but I'll come back and do that if in fact I didn't have that automatically set. So let me come back to Adobe Presenter, and I'm going to go to slide 3. And again, I'm going to insert this the exact same way. And I'm going to go up one level and select Soft Skills Sample 800. And I did externalize a skin, apparently. So I'm just going to go with the main SWF. And again, it's perfect size, so it should just, take on the whole slide. And again, Shift F5, and then I'll just pause it when I see something that I like in terms of a poster. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit Publish so that we can see exactly where we are. And we'll just give it a few seconds here to catch up. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to mute the audio. And I'll just skip to the next slide. And of course, this is that software simulation, so we've seen that. I'm just going to go ahead and scrub through the end to about there and let it play. And then I'll just fast forward to the next one. And there you have it. So, and I'll go back and check those settings. But unlike before, where the demonstration just kind of synced up to the audio here, in this particular case, it actually, the presenter slide actually goes 5 seconds. And then, in fact, there is audio there. There we go. So because this is not a self-running software simulation, then I didn't have to say, control the playback through the software simulation there. So you could see that I am presented with those options. So how should you respond? And I'm going to go ahead and say, ask the interviewer to repeat the question. And it says not the best question, so let me continue. Then it goes back, and I could go ahead and click on that, not the best answer. And I'm just going to go with the correct answer. And only then does it actually allow me to go to the next one. So again, if you want to create very complex branch scenario soft skill training like this, Captivate is the better product for doing that. But yet, if you want to deliver a very user-friendly, cohesive playback user interface for your learners, then combining the two applications works best. All right, now the final step, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Adobe Presenter, and I will go back to Manage Swifts. And just to recap, if it's a self-running software simulation, you do want to check this box. If it is not, in other words, if it's a branch scenario soft skill training, then you don't. But the extra step that you want to do, and in fact, let me go ahead and insert a slide here. And let's say that this is our thank you slide. Then what you want to do is you want to go back to the Adobe Presenter ribbon, and you want to go to Slide Manager, because there's an extra step you want to do to branch scenarios, soft skill type of Adobe Captivate. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and say Advance by User. Right here you want to say yes. The reason why is because keep in mind that Adobe Presenter is going to sit there, it's going to pause, it's going to give the learner as much time as he or she needs, but at some point the learner is going to say, okay, I've completed this, and they will manually click the next slide at the bottom, and you can provide instructions for them. But again, you do need this advance by user, whereas the software demonstration, you want to set that to no, like it is by default. And then again, we're going to click OK for that. So we're going to hit Publish. We're going to hit Publish again. And I'll just show one final time what this is going to look like. And here comes the audio. And I'll just go ahead and skip to the next slide. And again, here's a software simulation. And I'll skip to the next slide. And watch how it just goes. The playback bar goes for 5 seconds. That's the default. But then it pauses, right? Had we not set that feature or that setting, it would have just gone to the thank you slide. But instead, it just plays for 5 seconds, and then the soft skill training piece from Captivate begins to play here. And here's the scenario and all that good stuff. So at some point when the learner completes this, they will need to hit the next button, and that's the one that's going to take them to the next slide, the thank you, the quiz, whatever you need. Okay. All right. So I hope that helps. I see a lot of discussions out there, people talking about the differences, or Adobe Captivate versus Adobe Presenter or a similar tool. I don't think they compete. They do have some overlaps. But I think when you use them together effectively, to me, I think that's when you create some very compelling e-learning content. Okay, so with that said, I leave you with a couple of resources where you can find me, a link to my blog, link to my Twitter account, and I thank you for watching.